Hello guys, welcome to the Cheetah Academy. My name is Grant. In today's lesson, we'll be looking at how to create the drop-down, not a drop-down menu anyway, just a drop-down. I'll be creating the drop-down as an entity. Usually, this drop-down, they are usually found in navigation bars, right? It can be found anywhere in a web page, right? But I'll be creating this drop-down as a single entity. I'm just going to show you what I mean. Here, right here, this is what a drop down looks like, right? This is a drop down. So we're going to be creating something like this. All right, first let's define the classes, right? So here you say div, let's give it a class of say drop down. So right here, this is this drop down right here is like the parent of, it's like a container covering the entire stuff. And let's also define here the button. Here at the bottom, I'll give it a class. I give it a class of drop down button. Let me zoom out so you properly see what I'm doing. Here, right here, the button. So here in the button, we're going to put what we want to appear in the button, right? Which is drop down. We want drop down to appear in the button. Oh, let's just close it. So the next thing to do is the content now. When it drops down, the stuffs you see inside the content, right? So let's also create that. So we'll say div. We'll give it a class of drop down content. Drop down content. So inside of the drop down content, there are also links. All right, there are links where it can send you anywhere, like the anchor tag. Just see what I'm doing. All right, here we say ahref, right? So here we are supposed to put in a link here, but we're just going to use we'll use this asterisk to we'll use the asterisk to represent our link. So we'll close this here and we can call here link, right? So let's copy this. Let's copy this and duplicate it. Right. So next up, let's first of all, sorry, need to close all this. All right, I'm just going to save it. Let's save this and see how it appears on our browser, right? Let me zoom out. So this is how it's looking on our browser, but we are not done yet. We are not done. We're not done. This is just the HTML part, right? So let's go back and style all this we've made. And we'll be going to the style tag. We're inputting our CSS in our style tag right here. So here in our style, the first thing we're going to do is that, like I told you, the drop down, when I gave the drop down the class of right? I told you that it's kind of the container wrapping the whole stuff. So let's tie that first, right? Now, drop down. First, we need to position this. Position is relative, right? And the next thing is to give it a, let's say display here, let's say inline block. I think this position spelled wrong. So then we are done with the drop down. The next one is we are done with this right here, this drop down. So let's style our button, the drop down button, right? So here we say drop down button. So here in our drop down button, we'll give it a background color. It's a background color of let's say red. Background color of red. So you know what? Let's just check this. Let's save this and check this. Let's see how it's doing. There. Let's see how it looks on our browser, right? All right. So the next thing we need to do is we give this a color, say white. Let's give it a padding of let's say 16 pixels, right? And the font size, right? Here the font size, let's say the font size, this let's also give the font size 16 pixels. Let's save this. Let's see how we are doing. All right, I think it's bolder. Then the color here is white, right? Now let's go back. Let me zoom this a little so you see what I'm doing. Here, next up, let's say border, because there is a border right here. There's a border right here, so let's remove the border. Say border none. Border none. Save this. Let's see how we are doing. All right, border is no longer there. So we are done with here the drop down button. Now let's also style our drop-down content. I think that's the next drop-down content. Drop-down content. The drop-down content here. Display will be none. So display is none because, you know, when we first opened our here, these links are not supposed to be visible, right? They should be inside they should be wrapped up inside of, you know, our drop down button, right? So when you hover over it, so that is why we put the display as none. So let me just save this, right? And let's try to, let me refresh this. As you can see, the links are no longer there, right? So let's continue. The next, let's position this, right? Position here will be absolute. Position absolute. Position absolute. The next will be the background. Let's give it a background color. Give it a background color of say light gray, right? Say background color. Background color. Let's say light gray. The next thing to define here, let's the width of the, you know, whenever it drops down, let's define the width, right? The width here, let's say 160 pixels. 160 pixels. Let's see how we're doing here. So there will be no effect because the whole everything I'm designing here is actually taking place inside of the drop down. This is, remember, we are trying to style the drop down content, right? Which is supposed to be the drop down that comes out. So I think everything is happening inside. So let's continue. You're not going to see the effect now till we are done. So let's I think we're done with this. Let me close this. So the next thing to do is let's style our link. The link that we imputed inside of the drop down, the contents, right? Those links, let's style them. And that is, let me see. We're just going to say drop down content. Drop down content A, which that A is representing those links. So let's give those links, let's give it a color. Let's say color should be black, right? Should be black. Then we'll give it a padding also. padding, let's say 13 pixels. The next thing is the text decoration. The text decoration. Text decoration should be none. Usually, whenever you impute this text decoration, will actually, what it will do is that there is usually a line that appears under every link, right? So this text decoration will remove that line. Without text decoration, if I remove this text decoration, you find that once we are done, once we hover over our menu and it drops down, you will find that those text, those links, those text inside of the drop down content, you find that underlined, right? So this text decoration helps to remove those lines. Then here we say display. Display block. Let's save this. Let's go over here and refresh. I don't think you will notice any effect, but for you to notice an effect, right? Let's do something. Let's go up here. This drop down content, if you remove this display, if you remove this none, right, and you save this and you go back to our browser and you refresh this, you find that the the content appeared, right? You find that the content here appeared. But we're not done. We're not done. I'm just trying to show you how it works. So for this content inside of there not to appear, usually that's why it's called drop down, right? Because if the content inside of it is visible, then it's not drop down. So that's why we need to put the display as none. We need to put display as none so that it won't be visible. So it won't be visible. So we are done with this part of it. So the next thing we are going to do is that we're going to make it in such a way that once you hover around it, it will drop down. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to drop down content A. Run content A. We are going to give it a background color of let's give it a background color of let's say hover, right? Background color, let's say asterisk D. Sorry, asterisk D. The next, so when you once this hover, it will kind of, let's see the effect anyway. There is no effect yet, so let's just finish up. Almost done. The next thing is the drop down hover, then drop down content. Here, drop down drop down hover, and drop down hover, then drop down content. Say display block. Display block. Then lastly, we'll do a drop down hover, then drop down button. Yes. Yeah. Drop down hover, then the drop down button, drop down hover, drop down button. We'll also give it a background color. Give it a background color of let's say blue. So let's save this. Let's save this and try to see how it's doing on our browser. All right. So here it's actually functioning here. So the reason why it's actually dropping down now is because of this one here, right here, which is a drop down hover dot drop down content display block. That is the reason why it's actually hovering. This one right here. So here the last one, the drop down hover, drop down button, the background color blue. That is so that if once you try to hover over it, the drop. Of course, this is what I mean. When you put it there, it's now blue. The button right there is now blue, right? So that's just it.